I'm on. Bit of a disclaimer. My name is Gunter, and I'm not a maker. I'm maybe a fixer, but I'll get to that in a second. I guess my background is mostly in working with social movements and communities on and offline, and I have a background in like social anthropology, even though I definitely decided not to get a PhD in it. It's kind of like participant observation and ethnography is like a lot of, I guess, what I'm doing. And with that, I guess, comes a real dose of critique. So hopefully if we get my presentation up, I can tell you a little bit more about what I do. Currently, I co-founded a project called the Restart Project. Maybe we can go to the first slide. And essentially, it's a project where, I mean, I wouldn't even call ourselves a movement, although maybe we could become one. My friend Ugo and I, we've been working in international development and bringing technology into projects, working with farmers, urban squatters, all kinds of interesting, amazing social movements. And we just saw that basically they were taking great advantage of every single piece of technology, everything they had. And we'd come home and see everyone, upgrading their mobile every 9 months. So we also just got tired of somewhat of the, the aid world, and we wanted to do something different in our back garden. So essentially we started what's called the Restart Project, which we started with community repair events, pop-up events. We started in London, North London, about 3 years ago. And we run, now there's about 3 or 4 monthly restart parties in London. And it's a kind of an open replication model, so other people are hosting open community repair events. And so we fix, but we often end up hacking, and there's a lot of workarounds that happen at our events. And I currently also work out of a makerspace, and we've done a number of events in makerspaces. So I guess maybe that's what qualifies me to be talking here. So basically this is a photo of me at one of our events, but it's a very deceptive photo because I rarely get to tinker or do anything technical. And in my Twitter bio, call myself a fixer in training. I know a lot about what goes wrong, and I know a lot about what breaks, but my role at our events is not so much to get stuck in. Only on like rare occasion do I get to fix stuff. Because most of what I do is I'm kind of like the person who receives people. So sometimes I joke I'm like the maitre d'. So you come in the door and I meet you, I greet you, I find out what's wrong with your device. And it's the first interaction people have when they come to our events, which are very ad hoc and kind of strange. People don't know no one's ever been to a community repair pop-up workshop. Most people haven't. So here I think I'm talking to a kid in Tooting about how are we going to fix his game controller if we don't have the game console. But and we did actually end up looking at the controller with him, but that's my role. It's very much like the social, kind of the meter, the greeter, the communicator. And obviously this is natural to me. This is like a lot of what I've done ever since I was, I guess, a teenager. But there's a part of me that constantly regrets that I don't get to tinker as much, or that somehow my natural skill set is being manifest in this way, is pulling me in this direction. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what feminist economists call care work, and and it's not just about, and I really also have to make a disclaimer here, it's kind of strange there's 2 North American women here, in that we should be more diverse, like in this session itself. But to say that, and it's not just about women, so that's one of my disclaimers. But so care work is estimated, I saw one feminist economist who says that it's basically the unpaid and unacknowledged labor that happens in houses, in communities across the UK. If you were to put an economic value on it, it would be 3 times the size of the finance sector. To put it into perspective. And I would just like to propose that care work is not just people going and taking care of elderly relatives or dropping in on neighbors, or care work happens in makerspaces. And it is not just meeting and greeting or being friendly. It's about access. It's about translating and making sure the language is appropriate for everyone, or the brand or the image. It's a number of things. And I have a list here because I knew I'd forget some of them. But it's just things that we need to be, in a sense, we need to be really conscientious that this is part of the work. It's creating the right conditions. It's not just going the extra mile for access. So in terms of disability and other forms of access, it's actually making sure people participate. So you've taken care of access, but that's just one of the steps. And I think Adrian already alluded to this. And I'll talk more about that. But these problems are not limited to making and hacking. But as someone who's a tenant in a makerspace, some of the care work and some of the work of just literally like cleaning and dealing with materials, these are unique challenges. And I mean, I don't know, we can talk about it at the break, but I don't want to say that they're gendered, but I mean, in my experience, you know, I mean, stand in the kitchen in a makerspace, like be a fly on the wall, or, you know, at a sink, right? Because that's where makers and food consumers meet. And anyway, it's something to think about. So this care work, is it being recognized? Is it being acknowledged? Is it being, in some way, compensated, not necessarily financially, but like, you know, how is it being divided? This is a huge issue. I think Mel Chua's post earlier this year was one of the things that really like crystallized this in my head for me. And, you know, there's something really, I spend a lot of my time, well, I did spend a lot of my time creating women's skills shares, women-only space within our volunteer community, because we noticed there weren't enough women coming and tinkering and volunteering in public. But if I'm perfectly honest, like I could not sustain it. Like it burned me out to have to constantly do that one extra, like it's like an extra thing. And then in our makerspace, you know, the issue of accessibility came up, and we go to those meetings, we contribute, and we're very aware of the issue also of in terms of fixing the technical community. Our events are completely free. We will never charge money at the door, but that brings with it a whole, you can imagine, a whole other host of massive issues that we're dealing with on a constant basis. In fact, Ugo, my business partner, deals with many of them. But part of me wishes that Ugo was here right now, because what Mel said next, which is so, so true, and I don't know if you've been there, but it's like I'd actually rather be at home with a project that I haven't touched for 6 months, like with a, you know, I wanted to repurpose a laptop for another, it's just like sitting in my living room, like, or I'd rather be at my makerspace. But the point is, it's often the people, like, it's the people who are most affected by it who have to kind of come in and fix it, and there's a real problem there, like, and I just want to put that to everyone. There is a bit of a problem, like, you know, I wouldn't be a kernel hacker, but there are other things I'd want to be doing. So that's one of the things that it's come up for me in my work. The next thing I wanted to talk about, maybe more like this is more about our approach and some lessons there might be for maker spaces and the maker movement. So, and Adrian already addressed this a little bit, like opening up is not enough. So I know a lot of maker spaces have open nights. You know, there is an interest in bringing people in, definitely. But the problem is opening up is not enough. We need to be talking about meeting people where they are. And what do I mean by that? There's a number of things. It's not actually like literally meeting people where they are, although that's a good technique. So this is repair on the pavement at a market in London where we had a market stall. You can see this is a coffee grinder. This did eventually get fixed, but meeting people where they are means like actually like literally sometimes leaving our space and going in search of well, the people who might be your next and newest members or participants. But it also just means being relevant. It means, so in our case, we're lucky because fixing is relevant. I mean, that's the coolest thing about our events, is that it's relevant for everyone from the homeless person to the white-collar banker who's frustrated with not being able to fix his own mobile. So that is relevant. But an immediacy, like figuring out what's immediate to people, what will interest them. And there's something also about the approach and the way that we talk about what we do. And we struggle with this. We always say we don't want to be too geek or too green, and we're very conscientious of the way we speak about what we do, and I think that's really, really quite important. So I'm not proposing a revolution. I mean, although, it might be interesting. But, everyone here seems to be, and many makerspaces seem to be explicitly interested in this issue of diversity and equality. So if you've tried open and you're not succeeding, then these are some things we can think about. The last thing that I think, and this is the what's in it for us part, which is this idea of dialogic learning. And there's a whole history of like pedagogy that talks about that it's a pedagogy of meeting people where they are. So it's saying, okay, what can learners teach us? And in our events, what we find is that our volunteers, while they're very technically skilled often, they have these skills are very held personal, in a very personal way, and often not shared, and they're never in the open, in public. And so there's something really special that happens when people with technical skills share them. But also, learners, when they come, they bring all kinds of forms of knowledge with them, other multiple forms of knowledge and experience that the people who are supposedly educating can actually really benefit from. And so I think we really need to think of especially when we open up and we bring new forms of knowledge into makerspaces, that we're actually really benefiting from it. So for example, who are the scrappers in the railway arch next to you? Okay, like what forms of knowledge do they have about materials? And they also have a number of like probably battles with stigmatization and all kinds of problems with markets. The scrappers in the railway arch next to you may have a lot to offer you. Draft busting, what does draft busting and dealing with fuel poverty have to teach us in our own practice? And people who understand building physics, all kinds of other, even just through their own life experience. These are the other multiple forms of knowledge that people bring with them. And so someone who might want to come and learn more about digital fabrication, let's not assume that they're just the learner. Like, let's think about that person as as an educator also. And Paulo Freire, the Brazilian thinker who's written a lot about this, it doesn't really translate in English, but he really breaks down this barrier between the teacher, the educator, and the learner, and that we need to think much more in terms of dialogic learning. That's about all I have to offer.